Hi, I'm Vernon again. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're past 60, this may be the most important reminder you hear today, because we're going to talk about the 4 types of people seniors over 60 must never trust or show kindness to in old age. Wisdom isn't just about knowing more, it's about knowing who to keep out of your life before it's too late. In old age, trust is sacred and dangerous. One wrong person can undo everything: your peace, your savings, your dignity. Some people smile as they take advantage. Others use family ties or loneliness to slip past your guard. That's why seniors over 60 must set boundaries, because compassion without caution can quietly become self-destruction. Before diving into the 4 dangerous people seniors over 60 should never trust, if you've ever felt used, manipulated, or quietly exhausted by someone who claimed to care, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. Your voice matters, and your story might be the one that helps someone else stay safe. Stay with me until the end. What you hear today might confirm something you've long suspected and give you the clarity you've been searching for. Let's begin, not with fear, but with clear eyes and steady wisdom. It's time to name what others avoid, so you can finally protect what matters most. Number 1, the one who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries. There's a certain kind of person who doesn't shout, doesn't demand, but leaves you feeling small every time you say no. They don't ask, they imply. They don't threaten, they sigh. And slowly, without you realizing it, you start saying yes just to avoid the silence that follows your resistance. I know this type well because I lived it. There was a time just after I turned 67 when I had finally settled into a rhythm of peace. My mornings were mine, my garden, my books, my health walks. And then came an old friend from decades ago. He showed up with warmth, nostalgia, and a bag full of stories about hardship. I opened my door and my heart. He needed help, just a few hundred for rent, some support to get back on his feet. He said, "You're one of the only people I trust." And that line, that subtle praise wrapped in dependency, it got me, again and again. At first, it felt good to be needed, but then the calls became more frequent, the gratitude faded, the requests grew larger, and one day I said, no. He didn't argue, he just went quiet. Then came the message, "I thought you were different." That sentence sat with me longer than I care to admit. It took me months to admit I wasn't helping, I was being used. My kindness wasn't a gift, it had become an expectation. And when kindness turns into obligation, it stops being kindness. The hardest part? Realizing that someone I once cared for had been slowly teaching me to betray myself. Here is the lesson I carry now. Guilt is not love. Silence is not respect. And anyone who withdraws their warmth the moment you assert your limits was never offering you real friendship, only a transaction. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus would said, never trust the person who has betrayed you once. That doesn't mean living in fear, but living with awareness that true relationships honor your boundaries, not punish them. If any part of this feels familiar, take a breath. You're not alone. And your boundaries are not a betrayal. They're proof that you finally understand your worth. Let me know in the comments if you've been through something similar, and if this message resonates, don't forget to like the video. It helps more people see it, and your story might be the reminder someone else desperately needs. Some people manipulate with guilt, others with silence. But what happens when it's not just words, but entire identities crafted to pull you in? Let's talk about the second kind of person who quietly drains the soul. Number 2, the eternal victim who never takes responsibility. Not all suffering is sincere. Some wear pain, not as a season they're moving through, but as a permanent identity they've chosen to inhabit. And in doing so, they turn every room they enter into a quiet stage, where your compassion becomes the audience, and their story never ends. The eternal victim is not someone in crisis, they are someone in character. Their stories are filled with betrayal, mistreatment, and injustice. But if you listen closely, you'll notice something. The villain is always someone else. The problem is never them. What makes this type so disarming is the emotional resonance they stir in us. For those of us who have lived through hardship, we know what pain feels like. We know how isolating it can be. So when someone shows us their wounds, our instinct is to comfort, to help, to carry. But true pain seeks healing. This kind of pain seeks an audience. Over time, your support becomes less about helping them rise and more about holding them together. You become the constant reassurance, the permanent listener, the rescuer on call. And what begins as compassion quietly shifts into a role you never agreed to play. The longer we live, the more we understand. Growth demands discomfort, and not everyone is willing to endure that discomfort. It's far easier to wrap oneself in the comforting lie of victimhood than face the hard truth of personal responsibility. But here's the quiet danger. When someone resists change long enough, their suffering becomes a kind of shelter, and anyone who offers help becomes a tenant in their story. You, especially now, must know the difference between offering support and surrendering your stability. Some souls aren't seeking healing, they're avoiding the mirror. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The eternal victim never questions their own patterns, and if you stand too close for too long, their fate becomes yours. Wisdom at this stage isn't just about seeing others clearly. It's about knowing when to step back, when to stop carrying what was never yours. You can be kind without becoming their crutch. If this insight resonates with you, hold it close. Not everything broken needs fixing, and not every burden is yours to carry. Because sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's growing up. Now, let's look deeper at another kind of danger that hides behind charm, not sorrow. Number 3, the charmer with a hidden agenda. Some people don't ask for your sympathy, they ask for your admiration. They praise you, flatter you, make you feel seen and special. And if you've spent decades being overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted, that kind of attention can feel like rain in the desert. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Not everyone who makes you feel good has good intentions. The charmer is a master of emotional alchemy. They know how to read a room, mirror your values, echo your hopes. They say all the right things because they're not trying to connect with your soul, they're trying to bypass your guard. They'll tell you you're wise, generous, inspiring. They'll say, "I wish more people were like you." But slowly, those words turn into something else. A pitch, a request, a favor, always wrapped in warmth, but always with strings attached. And you may not even notice at first, because they don't take, they let you offer. They let you believe it was your idea. This is not about cynicism, it's about discernment. There is a difference between someone who admires your wisdom and someone who manipulates it.
And the line is drawn the moment your generosity becomes their business model. What's most dangerous about this type is how long it takes to realize the pattern, because the harm isn't loud, it's quiet, it's cumulative. It's when you wake up one day and realize you've given far more than you meant to, and they've given nothing back but charm. In old age, your need is not for more admirers, it's for more truth. And that means learning to ask yourself, who benefits most from this connection? Charm, like sugar, tastes sweet in the moment, but too much of it can quietly rot your peace. Remember this, being seen is beautiful, but being used is not. And sometimes the most dangerous masks are the ones worn with a smile. Take a moment now to reflect not just on what others say, but on how they make you feel after they've left the room. That's where the truth lives. If this part of the message speaks to something you've quietly lived through, share it in the comments. Someone else might see their own story in yours. And now, let's turn to a last type, often the hardest to accept, because they come not as strangers, but as those we once trusted most. The resentful caregiver who secretly holds a grudge. Richard, my best friend, had a son who moved back in to take care of him after a fall. At first, it seemed like a gift, the kind of support we all hope for in old age. But little by little, Richard's spark began to fade. He stopped smiling. He stopped inviting people over. And when we finally spoke in private, he said something that haunts me still. I feel like I'm not allowed to be old. Everything I do is an inconvenience. That's when I understood the subtle cruelty of the resentful caregiver. The philosopher Seneca once said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." But what happens when that kindness is laced with bitterness? When it's offered through gritted teeth, not open arms? Among all the types, this one is the most painful, because it wears the mask of love, and behind it holds silent judgment. This is the caregiver who helps you out of duty, not devotion, who smiles in front of others but sighs when no one's looking, who prepares your meals and handles your needs, yet leaves you feeling like a burden, not a blessing. At first, it may seem like generosity, but over time, their words turn sharp. Their tone becomes colder. You begin to notice the way they speak about you to others, with exhaustion, with complaint, with subtle mockery. And worst of all, you begin to internalize it. You start apologizing for needing help. You shrink yourself. You stop asking. The danger of this type isn't just in how they treat you. It's in how they slowly teach you to believe you are a problem. That is a slow erosion of the soul. True caregiving, whether from family, friends, or professionals, comes with patience, respect, and a sense of sacred trust. But when someone resents the role they play in your life, they stop seeing you as a human being and start seeing you as a task to manage. If someone close to you makes you feel like a burden more than a blessing, it's not your fault, and it's not something you must endure in silence. Even in old age, you have the right to emotional safety. Don't let quiet resentment turn your final chapters into quiet suffering. And if you've ever seen this in your life, in a sibling, a child, or even a spouse, know this: recognition is the first step to reclaiming your peace. Because only when we name the harm can we begin to choose something different. And that brings us to the final reflection, the deeper purpose behind everything we've explored. The peace you protect defines the life you keep. Let's take a moment to look clearly at what we've uncovered. The one who makes you feel guilty for saying no, eroding your self-worth with quiet shame. The eternal victim, trapping you in their cycle of helplessness while refusing to take ownership. The charming manipulator who wraps their intentions in flattery and quietly drains your energy. And the resentful caregiver, whose support comes with unspoken resentment that eats away at your dignity. These aren't just behaviors, they are patterns that, if left unguarded, can chip away at your final decades, piece by piece. But here's the truth. Your life, your peace, and your boundaries are still yours to protect. Old age is not about surrendering power. It's about refining it. You've earned the right to silence that drains you, to walk away from what weighs you down, and to choose company that nourishes your soul, not feeds off it. Let this be more than a list. Let it be a turning point. You are not too old to draw a new line. You are not too late to claim back your peace. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Protecting your peace begins in the mind, in the decision to value your time, your truth, and your stillness above anyone else's noise. If this video gave you clarity, please like, share, and subscribe. Not just to support this message, but to make sure someone else finds it. Someone who may still be trapped in silence. You've carried enough. Now, carry only what's yours. Protect your peace. It's not just wise, it's essential. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video.